All right, let's just dive right in. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to unpack a really fascinating source document about a total paradigm shift in science education. We're taking a close look at a classroom simulation called The Release. And you know, what makes this so incredibly compelling is how it takes passive students and completely transforms them into active, critical decision makers. We aren't just talking about reading a textbook and filling in bubbles here. No way. We're talking about creating an environment where the science feels incredibly real, the stakes are tangible, and the students are completely 100% immersed.
Now, if you're an educator, or honestly anyone who's ever tried to teach someone a complex subject, you know the absolute hardest daily struggle. How on earth do you earn genuine engagement? Especially in upper-level biology, chemistry, and biotech classes. It's tough. You're dealing with complicated math, intricate biological processes, and students who are constantly asking, when am I ever actually going to use this? It's a completely fair question. And as our source material points out, earning that true lean-in engagement is the single hardest thing to achieve in an upper-level science classroom. The source points out exactly why traditional methods fall flat. Worksheets just don't earn engagement. Handing out a piece of paper with isolated math problems, it simply fails to capture a student's imagination. But the release introduces a massive paradigm shift. Instead of a worksheet, students are handed a scenario with real stakes. They are told straight up that awaiting patient safety relies entirely on their math. Suddenly, the algebra isn't just an annoying hurdle to get a decent grade. It's a vital tool to protect a human life. Talk about a game changer.
Section 1. The Paradigm Shift, Meridian Therapeutics.
So the simulation drops students right into the deep end of a professional environment for about 2 weeks. They're divided into teams of 4 and told, welcome to Meridian Therapeutics. You are now the analytical and process development team. A manufactured batch of gene therapy is sitting right at the finish line, and there's a patient waiting for it. The only thing standing between that batch of medicine and the patient is the team's calculations. As the source notes, when you frame the assignment this way, the whole room leans in. Why? Because the final decision is entirely theirs.
And you've gotta love the company motto printed on every single batch record. The batch doesn't care about the deadline. It's brilliant, right? It immediately establishes the uncompromising gravity of the student's responsibility. It tells them that scientific reality and patient safety trump absolutely everything else, even the intense pressure to deliver a product on time. It sets a tone of absolute professional rigor right from the jump.
Section 2. The Crucible. 3 critical biotech cases.
Okay, so here is the exact workflow and the real-world biotech math these student teams are going to face over the simulation. The students must work through a chronological sequence of 3 critical cases, and each case dictates the fate of this entire gene therapy batch. Step 1 is the count, Step 2 is the formulation, and Step 3 is the release. These aren't just arbitrary academic hoops to jump through. They represent actual, genuine checkpoints that happen every day in real-world biomanufacturing. Let's look at exactly what each step entails.
All right, case 1 is all about the count. The students are tasked with measuring the batch's true viral titer using PCR math. And here is where the simulation throws its first major curveball. The students discover that the convenient number printed on the label is actually off. It's completely incorrect. This teaches a vital lesson right out of the gate. Careful, independent measurement always beats taking the easy answer or just blindly trusting a label. As a scientist, you have to verify.
And that brings us to a, frankly, terrifying realization in case 2, the formulation. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a wake-up call. Remember that label from the previous step? Well, it wasn't just a tiny bit off. It was off by double. 2 times. In this case, students have to apply the real-world dilution formula, C1V1 equals C2V2, to get the right dose. By doing the math themselves, they catch a colleague's prep that looked totally finished, but was in reality a massive double overdose. The math is what catches the error before it ever reaches a patient. Talk about raising the stakes, right?
Then we hit case 3, the release. This is literally the emotional climax of the whole simulation. Students must read the batch's potency off a standard curve. They know that 8 agonizing months of painstaking work have gone into this batch, and they know there is a family desperately waiting for this gene therapy. But the numbers come back, and the potency is below the required specification. It completely fails the test. So what do the students do next? Well, the rigorous, scientifically correct call is to hold the batch. Do not release it. Even after 8 months of work, even with a waiting patient, you simply cannot release a failing batch of medicine.
This teaches students one of the absolute hardest lessons in science. Sometimes, saying we stop is the most responsible and heroic decision a scientist can make. It teaches them how to hold a strict standard when absolutely everyone around them just wants to hear a yes.
Section 3. Building unshakable student judgment.
We've looked at the math and the scenarios, but the ultimate educational payoff here is how this completely redefines rigor in the classroom. Our source points out that, let's be honest, school is generally great at transferring knowledge, but it rarely trains students to actually use that knowledge under pressure. Real rigor, that's practicing the judgment employers actually pay for. It's recovering from a failed result instead of just forcing it through. It's adapting your plan when the data changes, navigating deep uncertainty, and most importantly, not caving or freezing when the final decision rests solely on your shoulders. That is exactly what this simulation builds.
And honestly, the beautiful bonus here is the built-in career exploration. The math, it's real. The clinical dosing ranges, genuine. Every role the students play represents a very real biotechnology career. They are actively experiencing what it's like to work in process development, quality control, quality assurance, and regulatory affairs. This makes the whole shebang an absolutely perfect fit for a HOSA chapter, a dual enrollment program, or any college credit high school classroom.
Section 4. Classroom ready and practical.
Now, if you're an educator listening to this explainer, you're probably thinking, okay, this sounds anything, but how on earth do I actually pull this off? Let's break down the practical requirements. The target audience is grades 11 and 12 upper biotechnology. But look at the prerequisites, just Algebra 1, biology, and chemistry. The math itself is only Algebra 1 level. The hard part, as we discussed, is the judgment. It takes about 2 weeks or 10 class days to run. And perhaps the most absolutely crucial detail, 0 lab equipment is required. Yeah, literally 0. It's entirely a data interpretation simulation, which means it perfectly complements your existing wet labs instead of competing with them for resources.
I absolutely have to highlight the grading philosophy too, because, well, it's brilliant. Students are graded on decision quality, not luck. A team that rightfully holds a failing batch will intentionally outscore a team that recklessly decides to ship it on time just to meet the deadline. The whole grading system reinforces the scientific integrity that the simulation is built to teach.
Plus, it is totally classroom ready out of the box. You get comprehensive materials, the teacher guide, daily plans, all the student data packets, a worked math workbook, and rubrics. It even includes formal, editable lesson plans with a teacher evaluation crosswalk. Because it's so well structured, the source document even suggests it makes for a perfect observation lesson for when your administration comes to visit. The source document actually leaves us with this incredibly powerful summary statement. The release is what rigor feels like when students can't put it down. I think that just perfectly summarizes the immense value of this product, which is available through Patience Learning. It's about making the hard work of science so utterly captivating that the students become completely invested in the outcome.
So, based on everything we've unpacked today, I want to leave you with a question. Are you ready to put this gene therapy lab into your students' hands? Are you ready to trade in those dusty traditional worksheets for an experience where algebra literally saves lives? And we're saying we stop is a badge of scientific honor. Think about the impact that kind of real-world scientific pressure and responsibility could have on the next generation of scientists. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity.